So COVID-19 has led to an election season like none other. The voting process is different in each state, and rules keep changing as election officials work to make voting safe and fair. But those changes can be confusing, as well as some new and unfamiliar terms popping up from the campaign trails that could mystify voters. So here to explain it all is CBS News campaign reporter Cara Korte. All right, so yes, we are all learning new ways of behaving and new words. We never even knew about social distancing and all these other things before. So there's been a lot of talk about absentee ballots and mail-in voting this election season. Is there a difference? What's the difference between absentee and mail-in?
It's a very important question, Anne Marie. It's probably the one that election officials get asked most. There's a short answer and a long answer. The short answer is no. There is no difference between voting by mail and voting via absentee. Think back to before COVID-19. When you heard about voting absentee, we all kind of knew what that meant. Maybe you were a student out of state, or you were an expat abroad. You had to apply to vote absentee to prove that you were not in your home, but you still wanted to vote. Voting by mail is very similar, but because of COVID-19, many states have opened up the limitations on absentee voting, and they are allowing people, because of their safety and because of fear of COVID, to vote by mail, which basically just means voting from home on a paper ballot. The reason why it's getting a little bit construed and conflated is because there is such thing as a universal vote by mail system, which is just for a handful of states, where if you are a registered voter, and only if you're a registered voter, you get sent a ballot to your home without having to ask. The asking process is really by registering to vote. There are other states, the majority of states, that will now allow you to cite fear of COVID as an excuse to get an absentee ballot, voting by mail from home. Now, there are still some states, much of this is in litigation and changing, or might change, might not change, but there are still some states that do not allow fear of COVID as a valid excuse. Texas is one of them that's under litigation right now. But in most states, Anne Marie, you can say, I want to vote from home, I want to maintain my safety, and your Board of Elections will send you a ballot from home, which is voting by absentee, voting by mail.
All right, so Cara, what's this other term that people perhaps are hearing for the first time? Ballot harvesting. What is it, and why do some people oppose it?
So ballot harvesting has gotten a bad rap recently, Vlad, because you'll remember in North Carolina's GOP primary in 2018, there was this big scandal where one of the leading Republican candidates was involved in orchestrating this large mishap that had to do with ballot harvesting. Now, I spoke to Maggie Toulouse-Oliver, who is the Secretary of State of New Mexico, and she happens to be the president of the National Association of Secretaries of State. She's important because secretaries of state in most states are the lead election official in their state. So she is an expert on all things voting. And I spoke to her, and she said, I do not like using ballot harvesting. She actually called it a pejorative term because she said it has such a bad rap that people hear it and they kind of get panicked. They don't really know what it is. It's not that complicated. What ballot harvesting is when a third party goes into some kind of an environment, oftentimes a church, or think about retirement homes where seniors can't maybe go out to the polls and vote. They go in and they collect these ballots, and they then hand them over to the Board of Elections. So states have different laws. Some states allow this, some states don't. But think about North Carolina, actually, where we had those problems in 2018. They since have changed the laws, and in North Carolina, when a group goes to collect ballots at a outward site, two officials go in. One is a Republican and one is a Democrat. These people swear an oath. They're not just people off the street going in to collect ballots. So this idea of ballot harvesting, Toulouse-Oliver told me she doesn't really like using the term. They're trying to think of a new way to kind of brand this moment, but it's not something that happens very often. And when it does, it is almost never nefarious or anything like that.
So I remember during the primary, there was sort of a big deal about the primary in New York and how a lot of absentee ballots or mail-in ballots were rejected because of all sorts of things, bad signatures, they got in late, that sort of thing. So can we talk about just what would lead to a ballot being rejected, and does a voter even get notified when their ballot's rejected?
Anne-Marie, this is so important. If you find out that your ballot is rejected, it means that your ballot won't be counted, but it doesn't mean your vote eventually won't be counted. So let's break this down a little bit. When you send in a ballot, it is received and it is what goes through a term known as ballot processing. Now what that is, it's not the counting process. During ballot processing, your vote is received by election officials, your data is checked, your social security number, signature matching occurs where they match the signature on your ballot with the signature they have on file for your voter registration. States have different levels of ballot verification. In some places you need a notary stamp or a witness signature. During this verification process, if one of those matches is a mismatch, or maybe you forgot to fill out your ballot properly, your ballot is then rejected. It will then not be counted. First comes ballot processing, then comes ballot counting. So if your ballot is rejected, in some states you are notified. In other states, you're given a tracking number, just like we are with, we're checking our Amazon packages to find out, when our packages are coming. Some states have tracking numbers where you can check the status of your ballot, whether it's been received, whether it's been verified, whether it's been rejected. So this is very important. You need to go onto your state's Secretary of State or Board of Elections website to find out what the process is with ballot rejection. If your ballot is rejected, you can still vote. You can still vote in person, or you can send in another ballot. But it's important for everyone to stay aware, stay on top of the status of their ballot, because if worst case scenario it is rejected, it doesn't mean you can't ultimately vote.
So, Cara, finally, what's the best way to stay informed about your state's voting laws and some of the important deadlines people need to be aware of?
It's crucial to stay informed, Vlad. As I mentioned, there's a lot of litigation crisscrossing across different states. It can be overwhelming. I completely understand that, especially when every state has a completely different way of doing things. Again, go to your Secretary of State's website, go to your Board of Elections website. They will have the most up-to-date information on what is happening. And make sure that you register. Make sure that you do so as soon as possible. And if you are voting by mail, as soon as you receive your ballot, get it in, because different states have different deadlines for processing, for counting. The best thing to do is to not procrastinate. Get your ballot in so that you can keep track of it and know that it gets counted.
Cara, thank you so much. Appreciate it. That's news you can use, and we like that.